Jack Ruby, his original name is Jack Rubenstein, was the individual who shot Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald being the individual that the government claims, that the Warren Commission claims, shot John F. Kennedy. Well, not too many people have ever really looked into the history, or public mainstream media has spoken about Jack Rubenstein's faith and how his faith and his identity specifically was a very, very big part of his insecurities in life, and how it also affected the motive and his interest in the John F. Kennedy assassination and his interest in assassinating Lee Harvey Oswald in general. So I went through the entire Warren Commission. I've been reading it over the past year, and I pulled out some specific parts that show just how terrified Jack Ruby was when it came to his Jewish identity, and how he would actually physically assault individuals that he deemed as a threat to his identity and to the Jewish people. So I want to begin by saying that this video is just going to be showing historical facts and information. This is not meant to defame or generalize any community whatsoever, but it's meant to touch specifically on Jack Ruby and his life. That's all it is. So I want to make that very clear for my audience, and then also for YouTube guidelines, because we still should be allowed to connect these dots. So I want to start off by showing you guys this. This is the Warren Commission here. Clearly, you guys can't really see that, so I'm just going to go ahead and read to you the parts that I thought was really interesting when it had to do with his identity. So here's part of the Warren Commission regarding his religious interests. Reared in the Jewish faith, Jack Ruby was not especially devout. Rabbi Hillel Silverman, who I'm going to touch on in a bit, is his rabbi, reported that Ruby's father died in 1958. Ruby normally attended services only on the Jewish high holy days, and he was quite unfamiliar with the Hebrew language. Ruby was apparently somewhat sensitive to his identity as a Jew. He forbade his comedians to tell stories directed at Jews or Jewish practices. On several occasions after 1947, he fought with persons making derogatory remarks about his ethnic origins. The evidence also indicates that he was deeply upset about advertisement insulting John F. Kennedy appeared from a Jewish-sounding name. So that's really interesting. You know, we're starting to read a bit about how he was so concerned about his Jewish faith, and how that would actually ultimately lead to a lot of his interests in John F. Kennedy and the John F. Kennedy assassination. So that in of itself is pretty weird right there. Now, let's go into the part where he actually got physically violent with individuals. So following his return from the army, Ruby was described as ready to fight with any person who insulted Jews or the military. Earl Ruby testified that on one occasion in 1946, Jack returned from downtown Chicago with his suit covered in blood. He explained that at the time that he had fought with a person that called him a, quote, blank Jew or something like that. This was one of the many times that he actually would fight with people. Here's another time. Two persons who recalled that Ruby, while in the Army Air Forces, asserted that he was extremely sensitive to insulting remarks about his identity and Jews. When during an argument, a sergeant called Ruby a inflammatory word regarding his identity, Ruby reportedly attacked him and beat him with his fists. Contrast that Ruby had no liking for work and carefully avoided situations requiring to keep his hands dirty. So the guy was incredibly sensitive regarding his identity. And, you know, it might not be worth sharing if it didn't directly tie into the case, when he actually described it as a reason for the motive of shooting Lee Harvey Oswald, which we simply don't talk about much. Many people are now starting pretty well aware of this, but it's important to know for more of the mainstream individuals that don't read about this too much in the media. So I originally found this, I believe, from a Times of Israel article that I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see it. And this Times of Israel article is pretty shocking. It says Hillel Silverman, the Dallas rabbi whose congregate killed JFK's assassin, dies at 99. So here we see a photo of Jack Ruby. And again, this is regarding Jack Ruby's rabbi, Hillel Silverman, who's pictured here. And this is what really shocked me about this article that I'm going to go ahead and read to you guys when it has to do with the motive of Jack Ruby. So when you read the article, it goes on right here, and it says, when Jack Ruby murdered Lee Harvey Oswald. Quote, the rabbi says, I was shocked. I visited him the next day in jail and I asked, Jack, why, Jack, why? He said, I did it for the American people. I interrupted Silverman at that point. This is the journalist stating this. And as I'd read in other reports in which Ruby said he, quote, did it to show the Jews had guts. The rabbi sighed, yes, he did mention that, but I don't like to mention it. I think he said, quote, I did it for the Jewish people, but I've tried to wipe that statement from my mind. So that's weird. There's something very odd about that. Why is he saying he did it for the Jewish people? Now, could Jack Ruby have just been crazy? Yes, there are reports that he was truly manic, and he actually ended up going through even further mania once he was imprisoned. And I'm going to actually read those reports as well. But prior, even going about saying that he did it to show that his identity group had guts, as if he's trying to protect them in some way, it makes you question, what was this ridiculous radical guy thinking that would ultimately potentially save his own community? And it makes you question, why does he think that he needed to go about doing that? So now I'm going to take you guys to some more information. This is after now he was imprisoned. I found this article regarding exactly what ended up happening to him once he was imprisoned. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. This is also pretty difficult for you guys to read. Let me zoom in and see if you guys can read that better. This attached itself to the only meaningful landmark in his life, his Jewish identity, expanding to the position of all the Jews in America. By the day of his assassination, by the day after the assassination, distraught and sleep deprived, Ruby had lost all ability to know what was going on in his mind. That the president had been shot in his hometown, no less, was bad enough. But it was also a blow to the aspirations of Jews in America, whom he so intensely identified. Having latched onto the right-wing plot, Ruby could only see conspiracy around him, conspiracy which included the presidential assassin. So basically, what ended up happening, what's reported, is that Jack Ruby went crazy. He was imprisoned, and the guy just went just crazy. And he stated, and he was so concerned after he was imprisoned because he felt like that for some reason the Jewish community in the United States was going to be blamed. And he said that there was a right-wing conspiracy in the United States to plant it on the Jewish community for the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That's odd. And again, I'm just stating what was being reported. I'm not stating I believe in any of this. I'm stating what was reported and what I can infer from it in general, because what we do have to talk about is the association of Zionism with Judaism. Because when we talk about that and we think about what Jack Ruby might have found disparaging or what he might have found offensive, it's important to talk about that. So this, again, is not to spread hate towards any community, but there is important things that we actually have to be able to question freely without being accused or suppressed in our speech. So the one thing I have, the very immediate question that comes to me is, let's say that he did say that. He did say he did it to show, he did it for the Jewish people. He did it to show the Jews have guts. This is direct quote, not my personal statement. And it makes me think, okay, one, Jack Ruby could have been absolutely crazy by the time he shot Lee Harvey Oswald. That's a possibility. Two, he could actually believe he was doing something for the benefit of his community, which he associates with Zionism. It's one and the same for him. So there's a bit of that. And it makes me question, okay, if he felt like he was doing it for his community, in what way would assassinating Lee Harvey Oswald benefit the interests of his identity group? Why would he feel the need to do that? That immediately comes to mind. What's also interesting is that in the Warren Commission, Jack Ruby basically infiltrated the Dallas police station after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and Jack Ruby pretended to be an Israeli media reporter. He pretended to be an Israeli reporter in order to get into the press conference on the assassination of John F. Kennedy at the Dallas police station. And not only did he pretend to be an Israeli reporter working for Israeli media, but when he went into the police station, what he immediately ended up doing is controlling the narrative. Whenever reporters would ask questions, Jack Ruby would violently yell out loud, connecting people, running up to people, being like, hey, what's your name? This is my name. Oh, did you ask this question? This is actually what you meant to ask. Excuse me. So whenever people would ask questions as well, he tried to meander the situation in a way. And if you read through the Warren Commission, the way he approached it was very odd. The way he went about, really trying to be the director of the press conference at the Dallas police station. That's what he was trying to be. He was trying to be a director. He tried to direct the situation to go in a specific narrative. He didn't want specific questions to be asked. He shouldn't have even been there. All right. The fact that he lied and said he was an Israeli reporter also makes you question, okay, well, if he's lying about that, then clearly he lied about X, Y, and Z things as well. So he's already in of itself an untrustworthy figure because of the fact that we caught him in one lie, which means how many other lies has he been implicated in? Many. And you could see not only him, but there's a lot of inconsistencies as well with his family members that also spoke at the war, that spoke and that have their logs listed in the Warren Commission. There's just a lot of inconsistencies in the story, especially when it comes to Jack Ruby. This is a very, very brief conversation about Jack Ruby and his identity and how that further adds to the narrative of the entire JFK assassination, but specifically why he felt like it was in the benefit of his community to assassinate Lee Harvey Oswald. And what I personally infer out of this is he felt like it was in the benefit of Israel. And he felt that something or somebody was in the way of Israel's benefit, and that by assassinating John F. Kennedy or by taking part in some sort of conspiracy that could have somehow helped Israel. That's my hypothesis. Do I have all the evidence to prove that that is factual? No, I don't. That's my hypothesis. Have I been pulling out articles and pulling out documents and requesting FOIA requests in order to attain some documents? Absolutely. Will I continue to do so? Absolutely. This is my current hypothesis, that he was somehow implicated because he was also part of a larger crime syndicate under Meyer Lansky, which at the time there was the Italian mafia, there was the Jewish mafia. This is just facts. Meyer Lansky in the United States was kind of the big figurehead in all of this. So there's a much, much larger ecosystem that Jack Ruby was placed in. And what we're really seeing here is, could this have been a motive for him? Could he feel like his identity or his identity group or the people that he associates with were threatened, and that conspiring in the assassination of John F. Kennedy would have saved them or would have helped them somehow? It's a question you have to ask yourself, and it really makes me start to wonder and pose a lot more. It requires a lot more information to come to the table to be certain that this is the reason X, Y, and Z thing happened. But I think we're going to start to find out a lot more information in the coming months. I truly think that more information is going to come out, more documents are going to be shared. Jefferson Morley's been doing great work on this, and a lot of others. So we'll see. If you found this video interesting, I'd appreciate it if you click the subscribe button below and give it a thumbs up as well, and share it with your friends. If you want to see more of my videos, super gifts and chats really do help me out. It allows me to do this more as a full-time job for you guys. But otherwise, I'll see